13 elite snipers failed the 4,000-millimeter shot until the quiet Navy SEAL woman spoke up. You never forget the kind of cold that grips a firing range at 400. It settles into the bones, creeps under the uniform, and steals the warmth from every breath that leaves your body. But on nights like this, nights where the U.S. Armed Forces gathers its best shooters from 4 branches, the cold is part of the ritual, a reminder, a test, a filter for weakness. The temperature doesn't care about your rank, your medals, your reputation, or your ego. And on this night, it would become the silent judge for 13 world-class snipers who would all, one by one, fail. Their target? A single steel plate, 4 kilometers away. A shot so far it looked like a dead pixel against the desert horizon. And somewhere beyond the rows of shivering shooters and humming thermal screens stood a woman. None of them noticed. A Navy SEAL. Quiet. Still. Eyes lowered. But before the night was over, she would become the name no one would ever forget. The Raven facility wasn't officially on any map. It sat deep in Nevada, where the hard desert wind erased tracks in minutes, and the silence felt almost radioactive. The facility was a Joint Branch proving ground. Army Rangers, Marine Raiders, Air Force JTACs, and an occasional CIA observer, all drifting in and out like ghosts. Tonight, the challenge came from SOCOM Command itself. Identify the shooter capable of reliably hitting a 4,000-meter static target. The task force needs one. The reason? Classified. But every sniper here knew enough to understand one thing. If SOCOM needed one shooter, it meant someone, somewhere, had to die, and they needed the bullet delivered with surgical impossibility. 13 men had been selected from across the branches, 13 shooters with confirmed kills that read like small novels, and then 14 Lieutenant Commander Elise Harlow, SEAL. Team 8 sniper designation since 2016, but known, if she was known at all, for something entirely different. She never bragged, never spoke about her service, never raised her hand when volunteers were called. She simply worked, then disappeared into the background like a ghost in daylight. Most people at Raven didn't even know she was present for the exercise. She stood in the shadows beneath the floodlights, her rifle slung, her face unreadable. A steel clang echoed through the loudspeakers. The test was live. The shooters rotated one by one. Each had 3 tries. The first Ranger fired. The shot sounded like the world cracking open. Long, slow, thunderous recoil. The observers stared at the thermal screen. Miss. Second shot. Miss. Third shot. Miss. He stepped back, jaw clenched, eyes down. Then came the Marine Raider, a legend known only by his call sign, Roach. He adjusted his wind chart, dialed his scope, controlled his breathing. Shot 1. Miss. Shot 2. Miss. Shot 3. Miss. He muttered something under his breath, something that sounded like disbelief. A CIA observer scribbled a note. The Air Force sniper tried next, then an Army Special Forces shooter, then another Marine, then a Delta operator who had never missed a test in 6 years. One by one. Miss. 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 At 4,000 meters, even the Earth wasn't flat enough to help them. The curvature mattered. The humidity mattered. The darkness, the wind shear, the shifting thermal pockets rising off the desert floor. They all conspired together like invisible saboteurs. But no one wanted to admit it. Not with half of SOCOM Command watching. Not with reputations on the line. By the 10th shooter, the murmurs began. This test wasn't made to be passed. Whoever planned this wants us to fail. You'd need God's luck to land that shot. The 11th man, a Ranger Sergeant Major, missed by nearly a full foot on his last round. He ripped off his headset and slammed it onto the table. Only 2 shooters remained, and neither of them knew what the test was really for, but one man in the command tent did. Colonel Briggs was a big man, the kind who looked like he hadn't taken a day off from chewing bitterness since '05 silver hair square jaw, arms crossed like steel beams. He'd designed this test, and he was confident no one, absolutely no one, could pass it. Because he didn't want the position filled. He wanted the mission canceled. He believed the intelligence was wrong. He believed the target didn't deserve what was coming, and if the most elite snipers failed, the operation would lose justification. He needed these failures. He expected them. But then he saw her. Lieutenant Commander Elise Harlow, waiting quietly at the back of the line. His jaw tightened. Not her. Anyone but her. She wasn't supposed to be here. Briggs stepped forward and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Harlow, you weren't called. You can observe, but you're not cleared to participate. A few of the snipers smirked. Some looked confused. One or two looked relieved, but Elise didn't flinch. She simply answered, voice steady. Understood, sir. She stepped aside. Colonel Briggs exhaled. Good. The test would remain impossible. Only one shooter remained, a Marine scout sniper with 20 years under his belt. His fingers trembled not from fear, but from the weight of knowing every man before him had failed. He fired. Miss. Second shot. Miss. Third. Miss. Brutal silence swallowed the range. 13 shooters. 0 hits. The test was dead. Briggs almost allowed himself to relax, but then the Marine stepped back, and Elise Harlow quietly set down her pack. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't raise her chin. She didn't show even a flicker of emotion. She simply said the 4 words that would freeze every man on the range. Let me do it. A breath caught somewhere among the observers. Someone shifted. Someone else whispered a curse. Every eye locked onto her. Briggs stepped forward, anger simmering beneath the surface. Lieutenant Commander, you weren't invited to... She didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the darkness where the tiny steel plate waited, 4 kilometers away. Sir, she said quietly, the test isn't invalid just because others failed. He stiffened. She was challenging him. Respectfully, but undeniably, the CIA observer leaned in. Colonel, let her try. And for the first time all night, Briggs felt control slipping through his fingers. Elise approached the bench with the calm of someone walking through a memory. She laid out her rifle, a heavily modified 408 Che-Tak intervention with custom damping, carbon fiber chassis, and a barrel she'd personally remachined back at Dam Neck Annex. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at the colonel. She only looked at the wind. Her internal monologue was quiet, methodical. Temperature drop. 3 degrees since first shot. Wind head-on, shifting left at 2 microamp, rising to 7 in gusts. Barometric pressure steady, humidity falling, thermal distortion minimalizing. She moved like someone whose thoughts existed in a different plane, a plane reserved only for the few who understood ballistic trajectory the way others understood music. A ranger whispered, "Why is she even here? She's a SEAL, not a sniper." Roach replied quietly, "She is a sniper, just not the loud kind." Another Marine added, "Doesn't matter. No one can make that shot." And then Elise adjusted her cheek weld. For the first time she spoke not to a person, but to the rifle itself. We only need one. The world compressed to a single breath, a single heartbeat. She squeezed, no tremor, no hesitation. The rifle recoiled like a living creature. A sonic boom echoed across the valley. Everyone turned to the thermal monitor. The bullet traveled through shifting air and dancing heat waves, rising in a perfect arc, then falling, pulled by gravity, time, and skill. A full 5 seconds passed, then, metal on metal, a tiny, unmistakable clang. The observers froze. Roach's mouth dropped open. The Ranger Sergeant whispered, "No way." The CIA observer stared at Colonel Briggs, but Elise didn't smile, didn't celebrate, didn't even look up. She simply chambered the second round. Her second shot was slower, more deliberate. She inhaled, held, released. Recoil shook the bench. The bullet curved through the night sky. 5 seconds. Clang. Someone actually shouted. Another man muttered a prayer. But Briggs was pale, ghostly pale, because 2 hits meant something undeniable. She wasn't lucky. She understood the shot. She owned it. Elise closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them with the kind of calm that made even the toughest men uneasy. Shot 3. The desert exhaled. She fired. 5 long seconds. Clang, 3 for 3. Perfect, flawless, unreal, and yet absolutely unquestionably real. The range went dead silent. Even the wind seemed to stop in disbelief. Colonel Briggs looked as if the ground had opened beneath his feet. His plan, whatever it was, had just been destroyed by a woman most people didn't even remember seeing in the mess hall. The CIA observer stepped forward. "Lieutenant Commander, pack your gear. You're coming with me." Briggs snapped, This test proves nothing. She had different conditions. The wind changed. Elise finally looked at him. Her voice was soft, but it hit harder than a rifle shot. The wind changed for everyone, sir. I just adapted. The colonel's face hardened. But the CIA observer wasn't finished. Colonel Briggs. SOCOM will want to know why you tried to block her from participating. A ripple of tension passed through the crowd. Roach stepped forward carefully. Sir, with respect, why didn't you want anyone to pass this test? Briggs swallowed. Hard. The truth came out in fragments. The intelligence was incomplete. The mission was politically messy. He believed the target was a scapegoat, someone being lined up for elimination to satisfy an agenda, not for national security. He wanted the operation shut down until more verification came. He wanted to stall. He wanted the failures to prove it wasn't feasible. Elise listened without judgment. Then she answered in a way none of the men expected. If the intel is wrong, I won't pull the trigger, no matter how far the shot. But if it's right, I won't let innocent people die because we hesitated. Her words landed with the weight of an oath, a SEAL's oath, a warrior's oath, the kind no one dared question. The test was over, but the night wasn't. Elise had passed. But more importantly, Elise had forced the truth into the open. 2 days later, a new intelligence review began. The target's legitimacy was re-examined. Elise was cleared to join the mission team, not because she made the shot, but because she refused to take it blindly. The snipers who watched her that night told the story everywhere they went. Some said it was the most disciplined shooting they'd ever seen. Some said it was pure instinct, the kind you can't teach. Some swore the wind died just for her, but most agreed on one thing. She didn't make that shot for glory. She made it because no one else could, and because someone had to. In a community that worshipped loud legends, the quiet one had become the giant. Elise returned to Raven on the anniversary of the test. Same range, same desert, same silent horizon. Roach found her there alone, staring at the steel plate. You never told us how you knew, he said. How you made the shot. Elise didn't look at him. She simply smiled, quietly, like always. The bullet isn't the hard part, she said. The hard part is believing you're the one meant to fire it. Roach nodded, understanding more than her words. And as she turned to leave, the Marine said, Hey, if you ever say, let me do it again, no one's gonna argue. For the first time that night, Elise actually laughed, a small sound, a quiet sound, but enough to echo across the desert. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet voice in the back of the line, the one who steps forward when everyone else steps back. True strength isn't about being chosen. It's about answering when the moment calls you. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is 4 simple words. Let me do it.